commented from the Senate floor on independent counsel Kenneth Starr and the investigation of President Clinton.
Mr. President, I rise today to call attention to a serious and deeply troubling crisis in our country. This is a crisis of confidence, of credibility, and of integrity. Our nation is indeed at a crossroads. Will we pursue the search for truth, or will we dodge, weave, and evade the truth? I am, of course, referring to the investigation into serious allegations of illegal conduct by the President of the United States, that the President has engaged in a persistent pattern and practice of obstruction of justice. The allegations are grave, the investigation is legitimate, and ascertaining the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the unqualified, unevasive truth is absolutely critical. The search for truth is being led by a highly capable former Solicitor General of the United States and a former judge of the United States Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit, Kenneth Starr. Mr. President, I'm deeply troubled today because Judge Starr's pursuit of the truth is being undermined every step of the way, every single day in the press by those whose sole mission is to attack and impugn the court-appointed independent prosecutor and the congressionally created process. And these attackers are not the journalists or the broadcasters. Mr. President, what troubles me the most here is that these reckless attacks, these ruthless onslaughts, are being carried out by the closest advisors to the President of the United States. Just this past Sunday on Meet the Press, Paul Begala, assistant to the President, accused Judge Starr of leaks and lies and called him, quote, corrupt, end quote. That's not a paraphrase, that's a direct quote. He actually used the word corrupt. The smear campaign is being orchestrated by the White House. Obviously, I can't vouch for the truth or falsity of the obstruction of justice charges against the President, but what I can tell you is that the assaults on Judge Starr, the character assassination against the court-appointed independent prosecutor, is authorized and approved by the President of the United States, and it should stop. The White House and the First Lady have announced that the President's problems are nothing more than a vast right-wing conspiracy. As many commentators have pointed out, this so-called conspiracy is so vast and so broad that it encompasses both the media and a White House intern. But I'd like to point out today that the vast and broad conspiracy just got bigger. Apparently, this vast right-wing conspiracy is so sweeping and so pernicious that in 1993, it compelled a Democratic-chaired ethics committee in a democratically controlled Congress to appoint Judge Kenneth Starr to help investigate whether Republican Senator Bob Packwood should be expelled from the Senate. Mr. President, let me refresh the recollection of the Senate regarding the 3-year Packwood investigation, which began in late 1992 and ended with Senator Packwood's resignation in 1995. I was the vice chairman and later the chairman of the Ethics Committee during that investigation. And as everyone will recall, that investigation was a very sensitive, personal, and serious matter. It involved the allegation that Senator Packwood had engaged in sexual misconduct and attempted to intimidate and discredit the alleged victims, and misuse of official staff in attempts to intimidate and to discredit. During this lengthy investigation, Senator Packwood objected to the Ethics Committee's review of his personal diary entries in the fall of 1993. The committee proposed a process where the diaries would be reviewed by an independent hearing examiner who would serve 2 functions. First, the examiner would review the diaries to ensure that the committee would see all relevant and probative information. Second, the examiner was asked to protect the privacy interest of Senator Packwood, his family, and friends. The Ethics Committee had to choose a person who was fair, impartial, prudent, and trustworthy. Someone who wouldn't be on a vendetta against Democrats or Republicans. Someone who had earned the clear respect of both parties. someone with the highest integrity, someone with a clean track record, a man with sound credentials who was above reproach, and the Ethics Committee chose such a man. They chose a man who was the son of a Baptist minister, a graduate of Duke Law School, a former clerk for Chief Justice Warren Burger. The Ethics Committee, chaired at the time by a Democrat and a Democrat-controlled Congress, chose a man who was the former Solicitor General of the United States, a former judge of the United States Court of Appeals. That man was Kenneth Starr. And let me tell you who was on the committee at that time. The committee was chaired by my colleague from Nevada, Dick Bryan. The Republicans on the committee included myself, Senator Craig, and Senator Bob Smith of New Hampshire. And the other Democrats were my dear colleagues, Senator Mikulski of Maryland and the current Democratic leader, Senator Daschle. And the matter was not quiet and secretive. The entire United States Senate knew who would be called upon to exercise impartiality, discretion, judgment in a highly important and highly sensitive matter. We discussed this matter actually on the floor of the Senate because there was a needed Senate action to enforce the subpoenas. Senator Alan Simpson referred to Judge Starr as a splendid man, a man of judgment, honesty, integrity, and common sense. Senator Arlen Specter stated that many people have spoken about Judge Starr's integrity, and the committee has already endorsed his standing. If Judge Starr makes a judgment, that's his judgment, that is it. And my colleagues on the other side didn't object or dispute that notion. For example, Senator John Kerry of Massachusetts voiced the consensus opinion when he declared on the Senate floor that Judge Starr is certainly a neutral party. And it didn't stop with the democratically chaired Ethics Committee and the democratically controlled Congress. In 1994, the United States District Court in the District of Columbia had to choose someone to serve as a special master to help enforce the Ethics Committee's subpoena for the Packwood Diaries. The court had to choose a man who was fair, impartial, prudent, and trustworthy. Again, someone who wouldn't be on a vendetta against the Democrats or Republicans. Again, someone who had earned the clear respect of both parties, and someone with the highest integrity who was above reproach. And the court chose such a man, Mr. President. It chose the former Solicitor General of the United States and former judge of the U.S. Court of Appeals, Kenneth Starr. So today we examine the White House ludicrous, self-serving claim of a vast right-wing conspiracy and find that the conspiracy has ensnared even more than we would have ever imagined. The vast right-wing conspiracy can now count as members of the Democrat-chaired Ethics Committee in the 1993 democratically controlled Senate. And lest we forget, the conspiracy can also count the federal district court for the District of Columbia as one of its members. My point here, Mr. President, is simple. The attacks on Kenneth Starr are unfounded and unproductive. The attacks are, in fact, unconscionable. And let me point out, as far as this crazy conspiracy theory is concerned, most people would agree that the senator from Kentucky has a fairly solid conservative Republican credentials. If somebody were engineering a vast right-wing conspiracy, I think I might have gotten wind of it. Furthermore, let me point out, I don't know Ken Starr. I don't recall ever meeting him in my 14 years in Washington. If he were a fire-breathing Republican ideologue, one would think that as active in Republican politics as I've been over the last 15 years, I might have run into him someplace along the line. The crisis in the White House is a crisis for our entire country. Crisis will only be resolved by a fair and sober search for the truth. It's clear from the record that Judge Starr is the right man for the job. I think it's important that the President and his people stop the smear campaign. Let Ken Starr do his court-appointed job and let the American people learn the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Mr. President, I yield the floor.
As Congress takes its President's Day recess,